Excellent. Thank you so much, Alexandra, and welcome folks who have come into this space. And just before we get started, I would just like to take a moment to reflect on land. So it is customary these days to acknowledge the lands upon which we conduct our gatherings. And in this circumstance, as so many have pointed out, we're not gathering in one place. So as we are sitting across many lands and enjoying the resources and the air from all of kinds of places around the globe, we're going to actually ask you to do two things as part of an acknowledgement. And the first is we'd like you just to imagine the lands that you consider home. Wherever that place may be, you may be there or not right now, but consider that land and just take a moment to think about the relationship that you have with that place that you call home and the lands that are there. And second of all, then, we would ask that you take a moment to thank the original peoples from that land that you consider your home, as well as the land where you are sitting currently, and to thank them for their stewardship of that land for us. And that is it, folks. And I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Julie, now, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon, everybody from Glasgow in Scotland. The three of us got together to put this program together, this presentation together, following a workshop that we did, which was funded by Ashoka last year. We're going to talk a little bit about that, as we committed to do that as part of the collaboration grant we won from Ashoka U. So this really is us reporting back on the work we did together, and then bringing it a little bit more up to date into these very challenging and strange times. So here's what we're going to do this afternoon. In a second, I'm going to ask Tracy and Dan, and I will introduce ourselves. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we define as digital storytelling. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the three of us journeyed together to explore more about this particular way of sharing and creating stories, what we learned from that experience, what we're doing now as a result of that, and then a little bit about digital storytelling in the time of COVID-19 or the coronavirus, and then hopefully have a bit of time at the end for questions. We're going to be showing some videos, so hopefully you've got sound and that will all work. But before we start, I'll just introduce myself and then I'll pass on to Tracy and Dan to tell you who they are. My name is Julie Adair. I work at Glasgow Caledonian University in Scotland. We're one of only two Ashoka U campuses in the UK. The other one is in Nottingham. We have been Ashoka U Changemaker campus since 2015. We recently renewed last year. And my role here is I'm a Director of Communications and Public Affairs. Tracy.
Hi, thanks Julie so much. My name is Tracy Mitchell-Ashley and I am a faculty at Georgian College. Recently I've been seconded into a role of faculty developer, so I help support faculty in the work that they do in the classroom. And absolutely thrilled to have worked with this team, and I'd like to turn over to Dan for his introduction.
Super, thanks. Hi everybody, my name is Dan Jackson. I am the Executive Director of the New Law Lab at Northeastern University School of Law. We're an interdisciplinary innovation laboratory that's working to merge creative arts and law to come up with new forms of legal empowerment. We were the first Changemaker campus to have social innovation and change-making fully interwoven into our law school curriculum, which we're particularly proud of. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of our digital storytelling learning and guidance to all of you, especially as it relates to how we're all pivoting to function in the COVID crisis.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Tracy. So the first what we thought we'd start off with is a video which situates how we got to work together and the work we did together in Glasgow last May. Gosh, it's funny whenever you see videos like this and you see people grouped together, you get a sort of, whoa, they shouldn't be doing that. So it feels like a different century. It was almost a year ago actually. So I'm just going to jump out of the presentation and play you this video to start to give you a sense of what we did to get here and what we want to talk a bit more about this afternoon.
We're at Glasgow Caledonian University in Scotland, and we're here for an Ashoka U collaboration-funded digital storytelling workshop.
Originally, we submitted the grant application. It was just Julie, Dan, and Tracy, but it was a popular idea. And so we had a number of other institutions that asked to join us and become part of this workshop. So we had a nice combination, a nice group of folks from the United States, Canada, and Glasgow. At first, I think the challenge that everybody came to the room with was about technology. Not everyone had a lot of facility with digital storytelling technology, with the various different platforms that we were being asked to explore and use to tell our digital stories. So there was a fair amount of anxiety, at least certainly for me. I had a lot of anxiety about the digital platform that I had chosen to work with. And I think that was shared around the room, at least at the very beginning of the experience.
I've come away with several different things. First off, a great community of people who are like-minded that I feel I've learned so much from this week, including ways that I can use digital storytelling in my institution. So that's the other big piece, is that I came in sort of with an idea of what storytelling could do, and now I'm going home with an idea of what more storytelling can do and how I can bring it to the community, to the students at my institution, to faculty and staff, to actually build relationships.
The creative process, I think, was really facilitated by the kind of ballast of knowing that we had help if we needed it. So I think I just asked a few questions, but not too much, but just knowing it was there sort of amped up my confidence. So I think allowing the story to unfold and taking risks, because I knew I was around other people who I knew they were pushing themselves as well. And it made me that much more brave, I think, to put myself out there, because I told a pretty sort of personal story. Yeah.
For me, I've come away from this workshop with confidence in my ability to compose and produce a digital story in a very short period of time, and one that is polished and looks professional and is entertaining to other people, and does a good job of conveying who I am and my own unique story and my authentic voice.
That brings back nice memories. Let's jump back into the presentation. So one of the things we wanted to start off with was by describing what we mean by digital storytelling, because it is one of these things that everybody thinks they understand what it is, and it can be interpreted in so many different ways. Sometimes I've seen it used in the context of gaming, sometimes in terms of marketing. But the definition that we use comes from a place called the Story Center in Berkeley, California. It was started back in the 90s, and it is very much used in a community sense and in a very personal and reflective context. So that their definition of what we mean by digital storytelling is a short first-person video narrative created by combining recorded voice, still and moving images, and music and other sounds. So that's a definition from one of the many manuals they've written over the last few years. But the thing that I think defines for me what this process is all about, and you saw a little bit of a hint of it in that video, is this phrase, which is kind of their motto, which is listen deeply, tell stories. Because the definition of a story circle is to support and collaborate on creating a story, which could be intensely personal. Sometimes it's giving voice to a story that you've never told before or felt uncomfortable telling, but you're doing that in the context of a very safe place, a safe space, and which gives you agency and helps you create that artifact, if you like, in a place of trust and respect. This is Joe Lambert, who is one of the founders of the Story Circle. This was at a conference a couple of years back in Brussels. And I like this slide because it shows Joe, and he's a great character, but also it tells you what you do in a story circle, which can usually last over a period of 2 or 3 days. So there's an intensity about it. And these 4 things describe what we generally do. First of all, you discuss what story means to you, and everybody has an idea of what story means to them from their earliest years. And then we go into this thing called the story circle. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we did that later on. And that's where you shape your story in a collaborative space, where you refine it and where you write it and where you play it back to the others in your group with a view to helping them tease out some of the elements that they think work best or you may not have highlighted enough. And then, as Dan hinted in the film, we get into the production part. And that can be intimidating for some people because it does involve sometimes using technologies which you haven't used before. But invariably, that again is a place where there's an element of co-creation and support from the wider group or from one of the facilitators. And then critically, there's this thing about celebration. And it's not just about making your film and then walking off and putting it on a stick and taking it away and using it wherever you're going to use it. You share that with the people with whom you've been co-working in the past day or so. And it's a great moment to share and appreciate the work that you've all done. Stories tend not to be long. They tend to be between 250 and 300 words. So they're never much more than 2 or 3 minutes. And they can be very simple or they can be quite complicated. One of the ones that I always use to show people what I mean by a digital story is the one I'm going to show you now. It was created a month or so after President Trump won the 2016 election. And it is a very, very reflective and very personal piece. But what I like about it, and what I think shows what digital storytelling is all about, is it isn't a journalistic piece. It is very, very contemplative. I've counted it, it only uses about 7 images, but it's slow and it's got fantastic use of sound effects. And because there's so little video and it's not kind of cut, it really makes you concentrate and listen to the story. So back to that, listen deeply, tell stories. So I'm going to jump out of the presentation and just show you, I think I might be able to link to it from here. So this is what it's called, Awake. Here we go.
In the good old days, this doesn't happen because they used to treat them very, very rough. And when they protested once, you know, they would not do it again so easily. But today they walk in and they put their hand up and they put the wrong finger in the air at everybody and they get away with murder because we've become weak. We've become weak.
I grew up in New Orleans, the 3rd ward to be exact. 2 blocks from Canal Street, a hood tucked away in a corner of no man's land, where dreams and aspirations drained into the sewer. I lived in this 3-bedroom shotgun house above a grocery store. The landlord put a cat in his store to scare away the rats, so they found refuge in my house. The walls were green, with large holes in them, and crumbling white plaster, used to repair the busted walls that caught the blows that my dad really intended for my mama. At age 14, I had this reoccurring dream. I'm afraid, really afraid. Afraid of this army encamped around my house and crawling up the walls. In my little hood, on my little street, Cleveland Street. I am afraid of exposing the scars on my skin. Afraid of not being smart enough. I am afraid that the God I serve doesn't care about me or my hood. Afraid of being poor forever. Afraid of dying without making an impact. No more. I am quieting my fear. I am awake.
So that is that's that wonderful film, which I think is one of the nicest ones I've seen. So that was Awake, and we're not going to go back to that. I'm going to hand over to Dan now to take us through a little bit more about what we did, and then on to Tracy to talk about where we've gone with storytelling since we all got together last May. Dan, will I just be your PowerPoint lady?
Yeah, please. Thank you, Julie. You can actually just go ahead and throw up all the bullet points if you want now, and because I'm going to ramble a little bit around the topics. So the genesis of this project was the 2018 Change Leader Retreat in the summer of 2018 in Durham, North Carolina. And it's a regular gathering that Ashoka U hosts, if folks are not familiar, with bringing together the designated change leaders within each of the institutions that are Changemaker campuses. And that year they launched an idea around a collaboration fund. And the idea was to provide short, small, limited in time grants for Changemaker campuses to collaborate together collectively. And the way they did it was actually a really, really fantastic group exercise where people threw up ideas on the board, a lot of ideas, everybody there. I can't even remember how many people it was. It was the 30s, mid 30, maybe 30, maybe 40 people. So there were 30, 40 ideas up on the board. And we all got to go up and put, the little green dots on the things that we liked. So Julie's storytelling idea was quite popular. She got a lot of green dots. For the record, my ideas did not get any dots at all, just to be clear. But the storytelling idea really did get a lot of traction, and it was very exciting. So the three of us put our heads together and said, let's do something. Let's run with this collaboration grant. The idea was attractive enough that there were other institutions that wanted to get involved. We ended up with a total of 5 institutions going forward. We had a grant. It was a relatively small grant, but very powerful. It was $3,000, but it was remarkable how we were able to stretch that. And so I want to just give a shout out to Ashoka U and their collaboration fund for scaling that in a way that was allowed us to really do what we wanted to do at Glasgow Caledonian University. And we did focus as we structured it. The three of us put a lot of time into the advanced planning to create our toolkit with some strategic focus on maximizing the cross-disciplinary aspects of our work, cross-institutional interaction, co-working, dialogue, critique, you name it. It was a really powerful way to go. Next slide, please.
Oh, is that it? Yes.
There we go. So this is the project team that we gathered. Julie was the lead in terms of the substance of the work that we were doing. We had a very large support team at Glasgow Caledonian University. You can see there Angela McIntyre, Fiona Kennedy. They participated in the storytelling circle, but also were supportive, administrative support. Will Gardner, who is the director of Bundu Media, who created that beautiful opening video about our project, was the digital tech lead for us, and everything that he did was absolutely indispensable, and he was absolutely delightful to work with. We then had all the other participants, obviously Northeastern University, myself and Jules Rochelle Sievert, who is the creative director of the lab, came from Boston, Massachusetts for the event. Tracy came from Georgian College. We also had participants from Mount Royal University and Fordham. It was a great team of folks. So what did we do? Next slide, please. We, in advance of our, go ahead and throw them all up. In advance of our time together in Glasgow, we spent a fair amount of time structuring what we were going to do, structuring the toolkit itself. We designed this flexible training toolkit that could be deployed to facilitate digital storytelling in multiple different scenarios. And then we brought the team together in Glasgow to test this really and to iterate on it a little bit further. We tested the training toolkit. It was over the course of just 4 days. We did have an advanced day on Monday that involved a lot of fabulous traveling around Glasgow and the countryside, which was really delightful. But we iterated and modified the toolkit as we went. And the result was 6 short polished videos, as well as a group of, I have to say, really creatively empowered educators who came out of this experience with a lot of ideas about how we could implement this in our work. And I want to also just flag here, as it says at the bottom of the slide, that this module, the toolkit itself, is available from Julie. All you have to do is email her. Her email will be on the last slide that we cover today. And you can also get in touch with any of us, and we will direct you accordingly to Julie. So we do want to share one video that came out of that experience. It's the video that was created by Sarah Gambito. She is an associate professor and the director of creative writing at Fordham University. And we thought that this was a particularly beautiful example of what came out. And so with that, I will pass it back to Julie to run the video.
Elegy for a Church. I was born to a church, and she was born to me. To feel favorited among God's creatures.
Sorry, Julie, we just need to switch screens, because we're just seeing the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. That's strange. Hang on. Are you hearing it?
We were hearing it.
Okay. All right. Let me just. So if I'm sharing my screen, can you see the church?
We just see the PowerPoint with the digital stories.
Okay. Let me just minimize that. Can you see it now?
Not quite yet. The screen is a little frozen.
The screen is going really slow. It's like it's froze.
In there.
Let me just run it back. Can you see it now? It says sharing is paused. Bring your shared window to the front.
Bear with us, folks.
How do I
For those of you who came in a little late, we've shared 2 videos previously in our defense. This has worked really well. So
There we go.
Can you see it now?
Perfect, Jewel. Perfect.
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
Elegy for a Church. I was born to a church, and she was born to me. To feel favorited among God's creatures. Blooming among raspberries, I said her secret names. Matilda, Ecclesiasta, Santa Teresa. Mary said hi with her recognizable family. There's her baby. Here are the parents that love this baby. Sublime transformations are possible. Clothes become raiment. Grape juice and saltines become communion with your good and everlasting love. Light through windows becomes plum, marigold, the ardent blue of the planet. Who wouldn't kneel for this? And we did for each other. Oh, for people in one room, one building, one forest sounding one note, one accord, together even for a nickel, a shaving of time. You said all scripture is ready for reproof, ready for my life that may slot itself in my hands. I need more than the simple truth, simple myth that you love me. But I will always stand by the door when you sing. Shall we gather by the river, the beautiful river? Gather by the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God.
Now, some of you may have a rightful critique that we chose the poet among us for the video to show. But it was a particularly beautiful example of what came out. And I would say that all the videos actually have the same level of sophistication, technical sophistication in terms of sound and photographs and video quality. And a lot of different, we use a lot of different platforms. You'll hear from Tracy in a bit about what we learned. Folks were empowered to bring their own choose and identify their own technology that they wanted to use, which allowed us to really iterate around lots of different potential ways of building these. With that, I will pass it over to Tracy to start talking a little bit about what we learned and where we go from here.
Awesome. And I'll just wait, Julie, as you're resetting the.
Can you see that?
What?
Can you see the PowerPoint again?
Not quite.
Oh, shoot.
Not yet. Just, you know, the interweb tubes are a little full right now, so it'll happen.
Let me just say, just to allude back to Dan's, point of Julie's leadership as taking lead in all this. Let me just point out that a good leader is really required for a collaborative effort that spans across so many countries and across so many different folks. So while it's not listed in terms of learning, let me just put out there that having an awesome leader who can sort of herd the cats and then also an awesome group of collaborators to work with is something that that I certainly learned is really important to the success of this. And I would say that that this project was highly successful, that our collaboration really produced all kinds of benefits, as Dan has mentioned, including the fact that we really felt empowered to sort of embrace this opportunity, both as a community build for ourselves, but as something that we could take back and use in our institutions, which was crucial. So in terms of some, concrete lessons besides those two very, very large, broad ones, certainly we did learn that business of connecting to talk about story and storytelling digitally before coming together was really, really key. And so our collaborations with all of the members involved, using technologies, just as we're doing now, to come together to generate ideas. One of the other considerations, and this is really a neat one, is to consider whether or not to assign themes. So at some level, these stories are meant to be personal and can take all kinds of different shapes. What is beautiful in that is sometimes there is no need for a set theme because it's the idea of bringing something personal. So the theme is almost my story, however it'll look. For our engagement, we decided we wanted to replicate what might happen, for example, in a classroom or when you're bringing together people around a particular topic. And so we set one, which was belong. And so the manifestations of what belonging meant to all of us were very unique and very different, which was beautiful, but it did provide sort of some thematic connection that if you're using this in an educational institution could be very beneficial. If you're using this in a community build way, then there may not be the necessity to have a theme. The other really important consideration is to consider the duration of the storytelling circle or community build, and then the number of participants. And certainly you can have too many, right? So we sat at 6 participants, which was fantastic, plus leadership of Julie's team, and Will, of course, supplying tech support. And so that made for a good size. And in fact, I'll talk in a minute about a story circle that I recently ran at my institution, and I had 6 participants and 2 of us that were involved in making things flow. So that was key. I would say no more than 8 is sort of the idea in terms of numbers, because this is a deep dive in a supported community build. And certainly tech support, technology has come up numerous times. And so while some folks are very comfortable working with technology, not everyone is going to feel very comfortable working with technology to produce a story. And clearly, we came in with varied levels of ability, and we were very fortunate to have the skill of Will to support us, but we did run up against some walls, and there were some changes in technology and so forth. So while it was really generative, because for our collaborative reporting purposes and the experience of exploring this field, we tried on different technologies and came up with many things. You might want to consider, selecting technology that you feel capable of supporting. So, for example, again, in my experience, I set Adobe Spark as the program that we would be using because I was very comfortable with it. Lesson 5, certainly using a story circle format is key. So lots of folks can create stories, and we have different skill level at telling stories, and some of us might even tell digital stories that are wonderful to listen to. But the story circle really is about bringing community together in a generative process where there's feedback and there's sharing, and an essential part of this is the community build and the connection that comes out of this. And so, absolutely. Oh, and for sure, we will share this presentation with folks who attend, absolutely. And then certainly the last sort of lesson is making sure that reflection becomes a crucial or a key part of the experience. And we had opportunities to reflect on what we were doing while we were doing it and with our peers and our collaborators, but also post event. So we used, we collected a reflection from the folks who participated. And then that, of course, is informed some of the work that we're doing here today, like the lessons that we learned. And Julie, the next slide, please.
Nope, there you go.
Great. Please don't, this is not meant to hurt your eyes. Please don't try to read everything. And yes, it's in the, it'll be in the Mobi app. Thanks, Alexandra. I should refer to that. So these are just some quotes of some of the commitments that folks took away from this experience. So 11 months ago when we were together, and certainly I know that different members from our group are working on different things. I'm just going to speak to something that I've recently done, just in terms of what the generative possibilities that have come out of this collaboration that was, again, funded by Ashoka. And I just wanted to acknowledge too that we did leave, because this is part of the reporting that we're doing back to Ashoka. We did leave that we would be coming to share what we did and the results that came out of this. So there we are, tick boxes. And I just have to point out that nothing illicit is going on in the bottom corner, but in fact we are sharing Thai ice cream when we first got to meet when we were at Durham. So this is it's all good, and we have clearly an ice cream fetish. I will acknowledge that. I think the team would too.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying, since it's me.
Yeah, I thought, Dan, I better, you better put
shady.
your name up there. People might be alarmed, actually. Okay, you can go forward again. So just to talk a little bit of one of those sort of pieces where things that we committed to, I'll only speak to my own commitment, because that's really, I can talk to it. In our team, we wouldn't want to talk for other folks, but we know that there are amazing things going on. My interest was really twofold for my institution, Georgian College, a small, it's not 7-campus college in Ontario, central Ontario. And so I wanted, first of all, as a faculty developer, the opportunity to build community among faculty. So we have, like faculty around the globe, things that are important to us. We have just in the last few years come off of a very strike in our sector, some feelings, some need for reflective work around our experiences as faculty. And so one side of my goal was to allow faculty voice, to build community among faculty, to talk about their pathways and their journeys as faculty. The second goal was to explore a tool that faculty could take into their classroom as a way to help students sort of reflect on stories in their own journeys, depending on the curriculum they were working with and the classes that they had and the outcomes they were trying to reach. So twofold goal, and I designed then a pilot based on the work that was first done by Julie in her digital storytelling project, and then work used by us and tested by us. And then I've pulled it over and put together resources, which if anybody emails me, I'm happy to share as well. And so in my pilot, I had 6 of us, 6 faculty who participated, myself as lead, and we have a co-op student who's in a digital program who worked with me to provide tech support. We established a team SharePoint and used it as a housing system, and then used the story circle model. The workshop ran over 3 days. And followed very much the model that Julie discussed at the very start, which is based on Joe Lambert's work. So I was thrilled, and feedback that I've collected, and this, by the way, just happened 10 days before COVID. So I did collect, reflection pieces, but our group has not had a chance or an opportunity to reconvene. However, the feedback at the time of the event was fantastic. And in fact, the group that participated were interested in fostering this. So helping participants join and feel comfortable to produce a huge database that could reflect the stories of as many faculty that we can get at Georgian College in a SharePoint dedicated to faculty. So this 6 all committed to wanting to make that happen after their experience of reflecting on their own teaching journey. We had set a topic, a theme of my teaching journey, and the diversity in the journeys was fantastic. And I had pulled up 2 pieces here to share. And I think actually I can go with either way. I know Julie enjoyed one, I enjoyed one. Why don't we go with Lamps on My Feet?
Okay. Can you see that okay?
Perfect.
Okay, let's go.
Thanks, Julie.
I moved to Guatemala with no real career to speak of, and little sense of purpose in life. The trip awakened me to my teaching and learning journey. An important lesson I learned was that if I listen to the voice in my heart when opportunities and people arise, they are lamps for my feet, lights on my path. That voice compelled me to move all the way to Central America with my husband in 1996. Given my limited life experience, I didn't really have any expectations, but I remember flying into the airport, seeing the volcanoes and the thick greenery below. There was obvious natural beauty there, but not long after I arrived, the beauty seemed to vanish. I was instead struck by the ugliness. Poverty, chaos, and violence blanketed the country. The sights were traumatizing. I remember the woman with open sores on her body begging in the city square, hijackings on buses, and amputees riding on makeshift carts. The images haunted me. But it was in Guatemala that I became a teacher. And it was there that I first understood oppression. Oppression taught me to cherish freedom. Once I came back to Canada and completed accredited teacher training, another light on my path, a friend, pointed the way to teaching work with the Kosovar refugees at Base Borden. My heart listened, and the people of Kosovo, who I was paid to teach, taught me 2 lessons free of charge. The first lesson was the value of Canada, a country that offers the hope of freedom. And the second was that through teaching English, I was learning that my life had more meaning than I had believed. Still, another personal journey directed summer services, where I found work teaching English to men and women from many countries around the world. This opportunity taught me that I am not only a teacher, but also a student in the learning process, and there was much to learn from people from all over the globe. I learned the importance of diversity. Once more, another light guided me to Georgian College, where I have worked for 18 years teaching in academic and career preparation. I have learned that when people are given second, third, and even fourth chances, along with encouragement, they can reach their goals. My students have helped me to understand that non-traditional education matters because it frees the marginalized. As I completed my MA while teaching at Georgian, I studied Paulo Freire. His writing provided further evidence that education frees the oppressed. He is still a guiding light. Last year, Georgian offered me the opportunity to return to Guatemala for a special project. I was afraid to go back, but my heart's voice spoke so loudly that I couldn't ignore it. What I didn't know was that the voice in my heart was leading me to a path of freedom where old fears would be put to rest. So I returned to the place that had awakened me, and the light shone all around. The ugliness had faded and given way to unseen beauty. One last gift I was given in Guatemala was the confirmation of going in the right direction. I looked up and saw on the wall of a school I was visiting the words of Paulo Freire, painted there as though they were meant just for me. Education is freeing, Paulo Freire. Follow the lamps for your feet, lights on your path.
Thanks so much, Julie.
Let's try and find the PowerPoint again.
No worries. I can talk while you're setting up. So the faculty who created that piece, the reason I chose it is because she was unbelievably nervous, very stressed about sharing her story, right? And really spent some deep dive moving through this, and then produced a piece that she was so very proud of, that really reflected her experience and her learning and teaching. And so of the 6 that participated, she was the most anxious about the experience, the most questioning about the potential for this, and the students that she works with at our institution are students in what we call an academic upgrading program. So they have failed to complete high school. So they are coming back for support to be able to enter post-secondary through a program that we run in conjunction with the Ontario government and the Canadian government. So there are students who are not your traditional students. And so she was suspect of the potential of this, and actually it came full circle in her understanding of the uses for this genre in terms of her students. So that's why I chose that piece. It was the most dramatic movement from here to here of somebody participating. So all told then, I feel that the generative process that was sort of born on that impromptu meeting of tossing ideas by 40 people, where Julie clearly had the best idea and we decided to jump on her train, has turned out extremely well certainly for my institution and for my own teaching and learning practice. So I'll turn it back to next slide. The last piece that I'll just speak to is, as the faculty were participating in the process, part of what we were doing, of course, as an outcome was what are the sort of skills associated with digital storytelling that are skills that are important to our students as we are graduating them. And this was generated by the 6 participants in terms of, Answer Garden. It's a program we frequently use. And of course, the things as they're repeated become larger in size. But it was amazing the number of skills that the faculty could associate for the potential of this as a teaching and learning tool as well. And of course, many of these connect directly to change making, which was exciting to me. So thanks so much. So I'll flip back to Julie now.
So one of the things we thought about when we decided we were going to do this virtually, and in the particular moment in time we live in, was where digital storytelling has a role right now. And I thought there was going to be a list there, but what we were going to talk about was where we are all using digital storytelling, or where we're aware of it happening right now in this time of very interesting and somewhat challenging moment in our lives. And Dan was going to tell us a little bit about where his students are using it. I wanted to talk a little bit about where it's being used in a virtual context. And then Tracy is going to share a little bit about where she thinks digital storytelling might have a role when we come out the other side of this. So Dan, this is the slide that you put in. You haven't told us what this means yet, and we're very intrigued to know what this is about.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about some ideas that I had about how we can use digital storytelling as a creative way to pivot the pedagogy to the COVID reality. This is if you can't tell, show and tell in front of the classroom, good old fashioned show and tell. But because of the unique process that this storytelling circle and story crafting exercise provides, I think there's a lot of ways that it can be leveraged right now, where a lot of us who are teaching courses, I'm at the law school level, but at all levels and all different disciplines, we're trying to find ways to come up with replacements for things in the classroom that can't be done necessarily remotely. And because of the ability of people to be able to focus on a technology tool and create something individually, I think it actually gives us a lot of potential. Consider using it for those exercises at the beginning of a project, at the beginning of a longer course where you're doing personal introduction. We all have that experience. We go around the table and say, oh, my name is Dan, and I went to this law school, and here's what I did for my career in law. Consider actually transforming that into a longer term exercise, a week exercise where people are, a week-long exercise where people are able to dive into their own personal story and generate something that, as you can see from the examples I've used, especially I just love Sarah's example that came out of our storytelling, really, really elegant ways of getting very deeply personal very quickly. Consider pivoting it a little bit, revising it to replace PowerPoint group presentations right now, which are a little challenging sometimes with these technology platforms. The slides get hung up. We've seen an example of that now, but it's a great way to actually give a really intense presentation of a personal story, a personal experience out to the world and to even a smaller group or classroom. And the last thing I'll mention is the notion of replacing reflection papers with something like this in a classroom. That's one thing that I incorporate into the legal design work that we do is reflection paper exercise. Anything that calls for celebration, anything that calls for a personal story, I think digital storytelling has a lot of room to grow in there. And with that, I'll pass it to Julie.
So one of the things that I've been doing digital storytelling for 5 years now, and it's an emerging area of study, as well as something which is gradually amongst a group of very keen and committed people happening more and more in community engagement or service learning, as you often call it in North America. At the end of March, there was meant to have been an annual digital storytelling conference in Loughborough at the University of Loughborough in England. It was being done in conjunction with the University of Baltimore, Maryland, and the Smithsonian in Washington, with a plan of having a UK-based conference this year and then a return leg, if you like, in the US next year. For obvious reasons, that didn't happen. So to use Dan's word again, we pivoted to something which was more virtual and digital. And we've created the Digital Decameron. It's being hosted by the University of Maryland in Baltimore. And what I love about this, for those of you who know what the Decameron was from the 14th century, in 1348, a party of wealthy young patricians took refuge from the plague that was raging in the city in a villa outside Florence. To pass the time, they tell each other stories. Now, in the Decameron, that happens with 10 stories over 10 days. But what our colleagues from this digital storytelling conference have put together is a digital Decameron, and the URL is there, where over 10 weeks, 10 stories will be published. So there's an open invitation for anybody interested in this area to submit a digital story, whether it's about the current situation we live in or a more personal story or a challenge they have faced, to submit it to this platform. And what's interesting, and you can see what looks like, in effect, a 14th century story circle. And as we have been saying, the crux of when this works well is when you're doing it in a collaborative situation. So doing it remotely and creating your own story without anybody sitting next to you and teasing your tail out or helping you with the technology might be a bit challenging. But I just love the idea that even in this time of challenge and uncertainty and fear, we can still tell stories. And I really encourage you to have a look at this. And if you want to, please submit yours as well. Now I'm going to hand over to Tracy.
Thank you, Julie. So certainly in the current crisis, global crisis, one of the realities that we know is that there will be a requirement for healing, and certainly in our sector, healing for our students as they overcome this experience and transition back into what will be the new normal in terms of education, and that is yet to be defined. but certainly being able to reflect on the experience is going to be or can be a very important part of the healing process. And so, you know, how I see digital storytelling for faculty working with students and for faculty themselves as they're debriefing or coming off of this experience is the opportunity to reflect on what exactly it is that they experienced. And so depending again on your courses and the outcomes that you are answerable to in your courses, there is some real opportunity to pull in storytelling of this format and in this frame in a classroom circle to be able to share and come down in that way. And so this is one of the most powerful things I think we can use digital storytelling for in the current situation. And it just, by its nature, it builds community and fosters empathy and demonstrates resilience, right, in the stories that are told. So, you know, certainly that's what I see.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm aware of time. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. On behalf of Tracy, Dan, and I, and our ice cream habits, we would like to thank Ashoka U and their National Organizing Committee for supporting us in the work that we did together last year, and again in bringing us back together for this. We're sad that we're not all together to carry on with our ice cream habit and perhaps other stronger things to drink. But we've loved working together, and we're very much looking forward to coming back together and sharing more of what we've done in this space in the years to come. That's how you can reach us. This deck, I believe, is going to be on SharePoint, and I think Alexandra can point us to that. If we have time for questions, Alexandra, I think you were going to take us through those. Is that right?
If anybody has any questions, they can put them in the chat, or feel free to virtually raise your hand through Zoom.
Julia, yeah, I'm just seeing some of the chat pop up.
So I'm just going to I was sharing some screens. So I'm just, okay. Tracy, do you want to take us through the questions? I haven't seen that you've been on the chat window more than I have.
Yeah, I've got the chat window here. Well, I'm just seeing some folks come up, and excellent. Like Dan, thank you so much for putting that into the chat. So the digital Decameron link is available. Dan has posted it up for us. And I see actually some great resources being shared. And Adobe Spark, I used as a platform when I was doing my workshop, and absolutely loved it. It's a free available. So thank you, Kevin. That's a great point. And I'm just going back, scrolling up through, and EventMobi is the place that will be sharing all of the PowerPoints and all of the presentation recordings, I believe, Alexandra, and we can access that through the website, the Ashoka website. So you look for Mobi. And have I missed anybody's questions?
I just encourage folks, if you're interested in duplicating this or playing around with this, to contact Julie to get the toolkit itself. Julie is all too modest in her introduction and the work that she's done with digital storytelling over the years, and so we were really, really lucky to be able to distill down her decades of learning in this space into the kind of workshop that created those beautiful polished stories. So I encourage you to reach out to her to get the toolkit itself.
Thank you, Dan. And the other thing, I didn't actually contextualize the reason why I started this work is I was doing a European Union funded project in South Africa. That's the last we're going to get of that in the UK, sadly, but maybe more. So we did a lot of work in South Africa, and as part of building the module, which I can happily share with you all, and was validated by my colleagues here, we also did a report on our work, which fleshes out a lot more of what we've touched on, both in that short film and in the review of our workshop last year. So I can send that on. And the word cloud, Susie is asking if the word cloud is available. That is in the PowerPoint.
Yeah, and word cloud actually, that's Answer Garden is the program. It's a free program with a free account that you can set up just by going to answergarden.com. I can put it in here. And it's a phenomenal cloud generator that, that my students typically enjoy.
No other questions, no other hands raised? I can't see any.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. We really didn't know what we were going to get in terms of attendance, so we were prepared to be just the three of us sharing ice cream again. So thank you very much for showing up. Thank you very much for taking the time to learn about this, and good luck with your own projects in digital storytelling. We'd love to hear how you did.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, stay well, wash your hands.
Sorry, and I'm just realizing as I typed in the Answer Garden URL after that lovely closing, this is the right one.
Back.
Sorry. So it's answergarden.ch. I knew I was missing something.
All good.
So take a look at that.
Image, Susie, ping me or ping Tracy, and if you don't want the whole deck, we can just send you that one slide if that's the one you want. Ping one of us. I'll just put, let's just put our emails on here again as we've left the as we've left the, that's me.
Yes.
Sure.
We've lost the slide.
Just typing mine in as well. It's a very long handle.
Thank you, Miguel. Wow. And there's Dan. So grab those if you can, or come back through any of the Ashoka facilitators and they can track us down. Stay well, stay safe, wash your hands. Thank you all very much indeed.
Take care.
Thank you very much. Really interesting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye now.